Welcome everyone. My name is Dan Craig, if you don't remember me. I'm the president of Golden Speakers Toastmasters. We're here at Fairfield Business Park for our regular Tuesday night meeting of Golden Speakers Toastmasters. We meet from 7:45 to 9 o'clock every week. If you have one of these devices on you, let's go ahead and put it on silent. I'm going to read the mission of Toastmasters Club to get you all excited. The mission of a Toastmasters Club is to provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop oral communication and leadership skills, which in turn foster self-confidence and personal growth. Hey! We have an honored guest with us again tonight, Adi.
A regular guest.
A regular guest. Glad to see you again. Do you want to give us a quick word on why you came out tonight?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adi. I'm from Jordan. I came here to the US, specifically in Iowa, to study. So I'm studying in MUM. Then I moved to work. I'll be here for like 8 months. So I'm a Toastmaster from Jordan. So once I came here, I just contacted Jean, and I'm with you now. Thank you so much.
Very good.
This is my
And
second
you have a
time.
role.
Yeah, I have a role. I'll be the timer.
We threw you right in. Very good. Speaking of Jean, Jean is our Toastmaster for tonight. So please help me welcome Jean Symington Craig. Do you need my intro?
Fellow Toastmasters, honored guest, but soon to be member, yes, and viewers at home. Welcome. We do seem to have had a few little hiccups out there in the world. We do have, I'm just going to check roles here really quick. So Carmen was going to be our timer and she is stuck at work. We do have Adi who's going to fill in, and this will be his first Toastmaster role in the US of A. Woo! Okay.
Let's take my role.
Not yet. I'm just going to check and make sure. Now Carmen, Janet is stuck in Chicago with a broken down car. So she was going to be our table topics evaluator. So I put Carmen in there last minute, and so Carmen is not here. So I would like to see how we can have a table topics evaluator, you know, an extra hat or so.
I'll try that one.
You want to do that one?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so Art will be, thank you for stepping up, right? It's always a good exercise to be a table topics evaluator. All right. I think that covers our bases. So let's go ahead and introduce our role players. Tonight, as I mentioned, we have our timer who's getting thrown right in tonight. Adi, what's your last name?
Hazim.
Hazim. I could tell you Mr. Hazim. But Adi, would you please give us the guidelines for your role
Good
tonight?
evening again. I'll be the timer for today, and I'll be managing the time. So, for the prepared speeches, we have from 5 to 7 minutes, but for the icebreaker, it will be from 4 to 6. When the speaker reaches the 5 minutes, the green light will light the green light, and then on 6 minutes you'll see the yellow light. On 7 minutes you'll see the red light, and it will keep with you. Also, we have for the table topics from 1 to 2 minutes. So at 1 we will basically have the green light, 1 minute and a half the yellow light, and when you exceed the 2 minutes, you will see the red light. For the evaluators, also 3 minutes, 2, 2.5, and 3. Should I?
We normally say at 2 minutes, at 2.5,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
but we have that, but that's good. So, and then, of course, extra 30 seconds after that before we get
Yes.
qualified. Okay. Well, thank you. Already off to a roaring start. Our counter is David Solomon Samuel.
Good evening, all. So I'd be at the art counter and I'd be looking for the words like, so, but, and tongue clicks. Oh, what is Xerox?
So
So,
when you say it, and then you start a sentence, and then you start the sentence again, it's like
okay,
repetitive.
repetitive, okay. Something like photocopying.
It's when you lose your mind and you
Okay.
can't remember.
And then a false start. So these are the ones that I'd be looking. So
Okay.
happy to do that.
All right, good, thank you. And the art counter always gets the most out of the whole exercise. So I'm really excited that you're gonna be listening to this.
Sure, it's gonna improve my listening
Don't space
skills.
out, you're listening. Yeah, you're the counter. Okay, very good. Our general evaluator, we'll hear later from him, will be Aaron Russell. And we'll also have a joke master, who will be Dee. We'll also hear from him later. All right, before we switch over to our speaker,
Do you want to know Superman?
oh yeah, we will do that. Sorry. Veda is downstairs. All right, so we'll just let him know that someone's coming. I can really get evil sometimes at this point. The door's locked. Okay, come in. Okay, good.
You put his phone on a silent mode, how did you find out that he's messaged you?
I looked, because I was thinking there's a high probability that he may be coming. And it's not on silent. Mine's the only phone that's allowed to be noisy, at least at the beginning. Good question, though. Good question.
Would you
All
like
right,
me to-
yes, so now while we're waiting for that, let's go ahead and Dee, could you turn the camera so we get art for our grammarian? Okay, yes.
Tonight
Should
I'll
I
be
keep the
serving
time
as
according to? Should I give you?
You just do it so when Dan does his speech and then when we do our table topics
You do it.
and the evaluation.
Table topics, yeah, speech.
So
and
we're supposed to have the prepared speech at 7:55.
Yeah, no, we're
Yes.
not, it's not to the agenda,
Okay.
it's just within there.
Ideally, we would be at, so
That's-
we're a little behind.
And we would say it's a Toastmaster's job to keep us on track. So,
Okay.
we're almost there, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
are almost there. All right, so, Art, would you like to go ahead and give us your grammarians?
Yes, I'll be
report, please?
serving as grammarian tonight, looking for particularly graceful use of English or awkward use of English, should there be any of that. And the other part of my role is to select a word of the evening and make note of when it's used. The word that I've chosen is subordinate, and I have a very long sentence to illustrate, in fact, two long sentences to illustrate the word subordinate, which can be a noun, a verb, an adjective, and in some forms an adverb. As an adjective, we could say some teams operate hierarchically with a team leader and subordinate team members. As a verb, sentence would be, yet other teams operate co-equally where no one subordinates himself to any other. But in every case, in every team, the team members subordinate their individual judgment to the collective decisions of the team. That's my grammarian.
Okay. Dee, did you use the red one? use the red one. So, of
So I'll be
course,
looking for people using subordinate in either of those fashions or any of the others that I mentioned.
yes, very good. Okay, so lots of ways to use the word of the day tonight. And we will go ahead, if we've got that on the board, Art will give a report later. All right, so we have our evaluator who has arrived. And so we're ready to have our speech, is that right?
Do you see the evaluation guide there anywhere? How about right behind the TV? Which one? Could you give that to Veda?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
So we'd like to have Veda give the objectives for Dan, what he's going to be looking for tonight.
Great. Tonight's speaker, Dan Craig, will be giving his, it's confusing, it says first speech, but that is the first speech out of two, correct? So it's actually the second speech, which is called the first speech. The purpose of this project is for the member to present a speech on any topic, receive feedback, and apply the feedback to a second speech. So the purpose of this speech is basically just to get our feedback, and we should set in our mind how we think that Dan did tonight so we can remember it for the next time he either gives this speech or a similar speech. So the member will give a well-organized speech on any topic, focus on the member's speaking style. The speech may be humorous, informational, or any other style. And the evaluator, which will be myself, will be in charge of telling Dan what he excelled at and what he should work on. With that said, I'm going to hand this back to the Toastmaster.
And it is a little confusing. This is the second project in the first level of the path. And the second project consists of two speeches. There's the one that he's going to give tonight, which is the first one. And that's where we get to throw all kinds of things at him and, just so, and then he's going to practice and he's going to go and take the pieces that he thought were good and apply them, and then he's going to represent it with the application of suggestions. So Darren, was it last week you just did that
It
one?
was.
Darren did such an excellent job with that last week, so that was really fun. All right. Let's just introduce our speaker for the evening. Dan Craig has been a member of Golden Speakers for about 8 years. He has served as the treasurer, the vice president of education, the vice president of membership, and now as president for the club. He works in Fairfield for a real estate developer who is building a subdivision in North Liberty, Iowa. Generally, pay attention to this part. Generally, Dan's work is an accounting and finance position, but sometimes he must deal with challenges in the real world, like having mailboxes installed. His title tonight is Me and the Mailboxes. Please help me warmly welcome Dan Craig. Good.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, honored guest. Tonight I'm going to tell you about installing mailboxes in a subdivision. Now, I saw some of you kind of have your eyes glaze over, you lean back. I know you're thinking, another mailbox story. Well, believe me when I tell you this dreadful tale of all the challenges that I had to face, you're going to know that you've heard a great adventure in which all the obstacles that nature and mankind could put in my way were overcome. Let's get to the mailboxes. There are 3 steps to installing mailboxes in a subdivision. Step 1 is to contact the U.S. Post Office, Postal Service, USPS. Send them a plat map of the area that you're dealing with, ask them to drive out there and locate the ideal spot for the boxes. They give that info back to you with the specs on how big the slab should be. Step 2, with that info in hand, is to hire a concrete contractor. That can be a little more challenging than you might think, but we'll talk more about that later. Step 3, after the pad has been poured, then back to the USPS, tell them the pad's in, they install the boxes, and we're off to the races. In USPS lingo, we're talking about CBUs. That's familiar to you, I'm sure. That's what a CBU looks like. In April of 2018, part 5 of our subdivision the development work was being wrapped up. It was time for me to begin step 1 and contact our USPS contact. That was Bill. I called Bill and my world was just rocked when I found out he had retired, this guy that I'd always worked with. So now I had to find the new guy, which wasn't quite as easy as you might think. The new guy was so new, he didn't have an extension. I'd call up and leave a message. Whoever was at the post office would take the message. I wouldn't hear back from him. I'd try again. Anyway, after 10 days or 2 weeks, I finally connected with him, got an email address. He sent me forms to fill out. By the way, the old guy never asked for forms. These were newfangled approval forms. And it took quite a while, bit longer, to get him out there, to look at the spot. So even though the whole process for me had started in June, it was August before we had the official word on where the boxes went and what the slab was going to be. Time for step 2, hire the contractor. I couldn't find a contractor. They were all busy. The weather was ideal. They were doing big concrete jobs. They didn't want a little slab job. They just weren't interested. I called everybody. I called people for recommendations. Finally, my boss said, ask the guys that poured the streets and the sidewalks to do it. We send a lot of business their way. They sort of owe us. These guys were just as busy as everybody else. They were just as unenthusiastic as everybody else, but they didn't exactly say no. So I sent them my little drawing and I crossed my fingers. This is a sidewalk paralleling a street. That's a sidewalk perpendicular to it. There's our slab. That's the specs on the size. At this point, we went through a period of a number of weeks where we'd hassle them and they'd say, yeah, we'll get to it. And it finally happened that in the first week of October, they got the slab poured. Hallelujah, step 2 is done. We're on to step 3, back to USPS. I called up my contact, John. I said, John, we're ready to install those CBUs. And there was no reply. After a week or so, I found out that John no longer had that responsibility, so there was another guy. The new guy's name was Mike. He was a little easier to work with than John. He had a good sense of humor, he was eager to please, it looked like it was all going to work out. So he had me fill out the approval form because, of course, the original approval form had gotten lost somewhere in the ether. But we were all set. It was the first week of November, we were just about ready to go. He goes out to install the CBUs, and then he sent me a text with a chilling image. He had gotten there to install, and it turns out that the concrete pad and the sidewalk were in the utility right-of-way. The phone company was trenching in their lines. They got to the concrete, and they just trenched straight through it.
Ooh.
So we're back to step 2. We have to get the pad repaired before we get the CBUs installed. The only big problem was it's now the middle of November. Nobody pours concrete in November. Rest for winter. March comes, we start hassling our concrete contractor right away. And we thought he wanted to do it, but the big problem was that it had rained more that spring than almost any time in history in Iowa. It was just a sea of mud out there. Nobody was going to drive out there and pour concrete. It just wasn't going to happen. But finally, it got done sometime in May, I believe it was. We're so close. Part 2's done. Part 3, I called Mike. I said, Mike, it's time to go install those CBUs. And he gave me a call back and he said, I've got bad news for you. The repaired slab is 4 feet by 5 feet. I have to have a minimum size of 4 feet by 7 feet. They've got to add 2 more feet. We're back to step 2. I called the contractor. I said, can you add 2 feet to this thing and have it be stable? They texted right back, yes. But that didn't mean they were going to get to it right away, and they didn't. But July 25th, sure enough, they're done. I contacted Mike. I said, Mike, it's time to go install those CBUs. He said, that's great, but I've got to go on vacation. It just figures. But 2 weeks later, he was back. They got installed August 9th. The process had taken only 15 months. I learned quite a bit from this experience. I learned patience, for one thing. But I realized, I had an epiphany that if I had the engineer draw into the plans the location of the mailboxes before the sidewalks got poured, then all this grief wouldn't happen anymore. The post office would approve it ahead of time, and it's all going to be just automatic. What could go wrong? We'll see.
All right, let's take, what is it, 2 minutes? Adi, would you time for us 2 minutes, and you can jot down an evaluation for Dan. Mr. Timer, did our speaker qualify tonight?
No.
Okay, past the 7 minutes, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. So we won't have a speech tonight, but that's, that's what this is for. It's maybe the next time he does it, comes in fucking comes. Isn't that a funny story though?
Yeah.
I just think it's hysterical. Plus, I heard about it while it was happening. It's just like, can you believe that? All right. All right, so let's go ahead and call Veda. Do you feel like you're good for evaluating, or would you like to do some table topics and then let me keep working a little bit more?
I think I could do a better evaluation if I had
A little more time. Yeah, good. Okay, so we'll go ahead as the Toastmaster. I will hand off to the table topics master, who happens to be me. Yeah, exactly. And we're gonna have a short table topic session, but I think we can get probably 3 in. So let's see. Oh, a little bit behind here, but that's all right. So who would like to volunteer to come up? The theme of the meeting is teamwork makes the dream work. And Babe Ruth, we're Cardinals fans at our house. The way a team plays as a whole determines its success. You may have the greatest bunch of individual stars in the world, but if they don't play together, the club won't be worth a dime. Okay, so who wants to volunteer? Adi? Okay. Now, could someone yell, let's clap? Okay, and Art's ready for doing evaluating. Okay, good. Adi. Leadership implies working with other people. In your opinion, what is a key component of leadership And why is it important for the success of the team? Want me to read it again? Okay. Leadership implies working with other people. In your opinion, what is a key component of leadership? And why is it important for the success of the team?
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening. When it comes to leadership, we always, like, from a person from the Middle East, we always learn from the US. This is what in my country do. So when it comes to leadership, personally, I read many books about leadership, like Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. To know myself also, because I'm ambivert in between an introvert and extrovert, Susan Cain. So all those things, and basically I was a manager, I was a leader in my previous company in Jordan, and through 3 years I can tell that building a trust is the main component to create, to be a leader. If you can't create trust between you and the team, you will not be a leader. How do you create trust? In my opinion, basically, it's all about having zero hierarchy in the team. It's not about having a boss and people they follow. It's about like everything. We all basically brainstorming things in order to take decision. Everyone has his own voice when we decide to do something. Those kind of activities, they're building like basically not a follower but a leaders. So again, to wrap it up, building trust and try to create leaders, not a followers.
Thank you. Sounds like you feel that the best structure is one where there are no subordinates. Where just everyone's,
Yeah.
it's a horizontal
Yeah.
structure.
Not hierarchy.
So no subordinates. All right, thank you for that. Was that your first table topics in the US?
Yeah.
We're gonna
The
break all
second.
kinds of records tonight.
Second.
Second.
Because last time
You did do it last
Oh,
time.
you did, okay. But at our club, okay, well, all right, good, okay. I still get excited. Always a thing to promote. All right, who would be our next volunteer?
I'll go.
Wait, okay, so. Okay, so, rock, paper, scissors, one shot. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, shoot, okay?
1, 2, 3, shoot.
Okay,
Great.
it's D,
Scissors cuts paper.
yep, okay, good, thank you. Well, D, if you have to do a lot of preparation, we're going in a different direction.
That's part of the speech.
You gotta
That
be
was his
ready,
30 seconds
you gotta be ready.
that he usually
Okay.
doesn't take.
There you go,
Mm.
all right. D, if you could pick any group of individuals, alive or not, to be on your team, who would you select and what would you be trying to accomplish together? Want me to read it again?
No, I got it. I'm just thinking.
Okay,
group of
so,
individuals.
good, think, and you have up to
First-
30 seconds to
My
think.
first thought was the Chicago Bears.
Well, don't, think, you know, they have up to 30 seconds to think. Try to keep them going
We time once you start.
once you start,
Yeah.
you know.
I lived in San Francisco, California for a long time. And one of my favorite things to do there is to watch the Golden State Warriors basketball team play. These guys can do almost anything. They can be running down the court, jump from mid-court and dunk the ball in the basket. So they can accomplish anything. So you think about accomplishing something, you have to think about basketball players, because the dedication it takes from the time you're 6 or 7 years old to perfect your craft. And if you watch these people when they move up in the air, twist around and dunk the ball. I have a favorite video in my mind. Everybody knows who Michael Jordan is. Anybody here not know who Michael Jordan is?
The guy who does the sneakers.
Yeah.
Space Jam.
Exactly. They made sneakers after him. That's why he's so famous. So Michael's running down the court. He takes the basketball. You know where the top of the key is? If you have the foul line, you have that circle that comes back here. He jumps from there. He jumps from there. He's hydroplaning. He's like he got wings on. His arm goes up. His arm comes back in. His legs come into his body. He does it again. And the ball goes into the basket like that. The guys on the court around him, I'm trying to remember their names, I used to follow them all the time, are standing there looking around saying, what was that? What was that? So I grew up playing basketball in a barn. We had hoops inside the barn. You could run, and jump, and put your foot up on one of the slats, and you could dunk the ball. Because I could never do it. So that's why that's my favorite thing to do.
Okay. He's gonna win himself a championship, an NBA championship. Okay, we have time for one more. Yes, the other half of the. All right, Aaron. Describe a time in your life when, with one or more other people, you achieved a better result than if you had tried to do the same thing by yourself.
That's interesting.
Want me to read it again?
No.
You good?
Oh, I got it.
Okay, good. All right.
For one of my biggest setbacks that has set me back for quite a while between work and personal life is that I like things to be done a certain way. I mean, I think we all do, but I'm very meticulous about how the house is maintained, how my desk is organized, how things on my paint floor get run. I'm very meticulous that it almost has to be done a certain way or else it's being done wrong. And that has come back to bite me quite a few times in the past. When my wife and I moved in together, there were definitely a lot of changes that needed to take place. Now she had come and visit me at my old apartment a few times, but now we were actually living together, and this girl that used to be a part-time roommate of mine, maybe once every other week or so, was now my permanent roommate. And there were certain things that clashed a little bit between us. And she did not like to do things such as keeping the house maintained a certain way as I did. And we had a lot of disagreements. We would clash at first. No, the laundry has to go over here. Why would you dare put the laundry over there? That doesn't make any sense. That's illogical. But as time went on and certain things, we started to work together instead of clashing with each other. We started to realize that, well, maybe some of her ideas, if I actually listen to what she has to say, a lot of her ideas about how the dishes are put into the dishwasher or how different dishes are organized into the cupboards afterwards, while they're not the way that I wanted them to get done, some of them might actually be correct. And in some ways, some of the things that she always took for granted, she eventually realized that a lot of the things that I was doing such as taking the trash out instead of letting the trash aerate, as she would like to do, so that then all the trash would just pile up in another part of the house until we put a new trash bag in. We eventually got used to each other's quirks and almost come to a mutual agreement on how best to maintain the house, which is more than what we have done individually.
Very good, very good. Very good. I used to work in retail in Martha Stewart. In Martha Stewart, there's one way to do it. Everything else is subordinate, inferior, less than ideal. It's kind of funny. I mean, she had good ideas. It's not, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But no tolerance for like anything else. All right, good. So that's our table topics for the evening. And I'd like to go ahead and ask our timer to tell us which table topics qualify.
We had the three, me, Dee, and Aaron. How margin do we have?
You can go up to 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay, all in time.
Everyone qualified.
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and fill out a slip or a piece of paper on your agenda. All right, so in the meantime, let's go ahead and call up our general evaluator, who is Aaron Russell, who can introduce Veda and the other evaluator, Art. Okay? Can't quite hear.
At this time, I would like to call up Veda Royale to do an evaluation of Dan Craig's speech.
Okay.
Great job, Dan. As previously stated, this is the second speech. The second speech will be the third speech. I'll take a moment to absorb that. But seriously, Dan's speech almost blew our socks off. Dan comes with a professional appearance. He's well put together. He's calm. He has a pleasant manner. It just makes him believable. We never question his credentials for doing this massive architectural project, which it seems became more and more complicated. But I love the way the speech started out as a very conventional speech. A good introduction, a body, the steps 1, steps 2, steps 3, and then back to the next steps and over here. And so he stays it. He also uses arms for gestures. So we felt that he was a good speaker, they used gestures, he seemed to have some amount of audience engagement, and he was completely comfortable. That's what I loved about the speech. Because as we were fooled into thinking it's going to be a simple speech, and then it gets more and more twisted. It's like going down the yellow brick road. And it becomes a woolly cast of characters. So just to evaluate, I gave him high scores on clarity and comfort level. Very good scores on vocal variety, eye contact, gestures, and audience awareness. Also, the interest to the audience was extremely high. The weak parts could have been a little bit on the audience awareness, and the fact that it went so long, I'm not sure if he was able to exactly judge where the speech was going. And I'm thinking that with a little more practice, Dan could improve the speech by shortening it up a little bit and getting to a more cogent punchline. The other suggestion I have for Dan is that he takes the time to develop the vocal variety a little bit more with his highs and lows. The gestures could be larger. The gestures, the speech itself could be a little bit more inventive, particularly about his feelings and how those experiences made him feel. And he could use more invective in his words to show us, and more gestures that show his feelings. But overall, a great job and a basis that you can really improve on. Thank you, Dan. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Veda. Next, I would like to call our table topics evaluator, Art, to give his evaluation of our table topic speakers for tonight. Take it away, Art.
My comments about Adi. Adi introduced his background as a manager of a group in Georgia, his native country, and proceeded to tell us that the component of leadership which was most important was the building of trust in a team, and the way to do that was to build as flat as possible a team operation structure, as minimal he said zero hierarchy, and for the team leader, if there is one, to build a team of leaders, not leadership, not followers. What I felt you might think about doing, Adi, with this little talk was shorten up the introduction about your background as a manager and elaborate further on what a team leader could do to build a zero hierarchy team. Second speaker was Dee, who gave us a brilliant discussion of the Golden State Warriors basketball team in operation. What I thought you missed, Dee, and that you might want to think about including next time if you talk on this topic. Jean asked, who would you select to be on your team, and what mission would you choose? And like most of the speakers, you dropped the answering the question of what mission would you go after with this team that you assemble around you. Aaron spoke about the rapprochement that he made with his wife to break down his own rigidity about having to do things my way. It was at a time when he discovered the benefit of working in collaboration with another person as opposed to doing it my way. But I thought you might think about adding to this talk, Aaron, would be the humor possibilities in this talk are very large and right there almost on the surface. Whereas the other two speakers didn't have a humorous kind of talk. You could have made yours really outstanding by bringing out the humor aspect. That's my report.
That's me. What's that?
Check the timing and then we do it.
Yes. Adi, could you let us know which of our evaluators qualified?
TMV, the exceeded time.
It did, okay.
Yeah.
Past 3 minutes, 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Just checking.
And Art is on time. Has
Whoa, Art.
It's two in a row.
Whoa. Art's very full, but timing is, wow, great. Okay, so then we know who our best
Okay.
evaluators is.
Yeah, so no need to vote. And now it's my report. All right. Yes. Just overall, we,
Reports first,
okay.
and then you do.
Oh, okay. So first, I'd like to comment on Veda's evaluation of Dan.
Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Do these guys first.
Oh.
And then you're at the end. Yep,
right.
it's all right.
First, I'd like to call up our timer, Adi, to give us his timer's report.
Good evening again. We started at 7:45, which is on time. We had one speaker who exceeded the time.
And so what you wanna do is just give the name
Name
and
and
the time.
okay.
Mhm.
Dan, in his prepared speech, 7 minutes 42 seconds.
Ah,
In the table topics, me 1 minute and 54 seconds. D 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Aaron 2 minutes 24 seconds. TMV in his evaluation 3 minutes and 51 seconds. Art 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
Okay, great, thank you.
Next, I'd like to call on our grammarian, Art Atkinson, to give his grammarian report.
Jean used subordinate once, and I believe it was in the adjective fashion. The phrase that caught my attention in Dan's speech was after this litany of what had gone wrong, his punchline, what could go wrong? I like that. That's my report.
Next is our ah counter, David Solomon Samuel. Please give us your report.
I should be doing that. I was just being a bad example. Again, one more. Sorry.
Don't mention my name.
Dan had 2 so's and 2 ands. Jean, you had 1 1 and 2 ands. Adi, you had about 4 2 uns and 2 likes and 1 so. D, you had 2 and 3 times, and Aaron, you had 2 and Veda, you had 1 so and 1 and. So that's my report.
Was art clean?
Yeah.
Art was clean.
All right. It was clean and on time. I believe it.
Don't feel bad about those numbers, Adi. When I think the first time I was general evaluator, I probably had 14 uhs. Mine was pretty bad, I recall.
Me sitting at the art counter, I keep saying that, so.
Yeah,
No.
but you'll hear it, right? You're hearing it? Okay.
You become more aware of it.
Just being conscious of what I'm saying.
Now I'd like to call up Dee Stouffer to give us our jokes for tonight.
Okay.
Given the current political situation in the country, I found one good one. What do you call a lawyer who goes to the dark side? A senator.
Is that supposed to be a Star Wars joke?
It's actually
Like
a
Senator
song.
Palpatine, or am I reading too deep into it?
Yeah. What do you get when you cross a chicken with a guitar?
I don't know if it plucks well.
That's it.
Yeah, good.
It plucks itself.
Yeah.
That was close.
Are we done?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay,
We're done.
All right, now comes to my part, right, Jean?
Mhm.
Okay. Just some general comments on the meeting. We started relatively on time. I think we started about 7:47, so better. We've definitely had a lot worse starts than that. And I think we made up some time based on going through some of the reports more quickly than the schedule allows for. And we also made some last minute changes based on absenteeism, and it's really great to see people step up. Particularly Art stepping up at the last minute to be our table topics evaluator, and Adi to be our timer. So we thank you very much for being able to step up for that. And I'd like to move on to Veda's evaluation of Dan. Veda opened up with sort of a joke, I guess I would say, kind of a more lighthearted opening to kind of break the ice a little bit with the audience, which I really appreciated. I think it definitely put the evaluation off to a good start. And I liked how you evaluated a lot of your positive feedback towards Dan, towards actionable results. I know you talked about the way that Dan speaks and the way that he sort of holds himself, that it made his story believable. And so it's nice to, not only comment on the fact that yeah, he had good vocal variety and a good posture and use of stage, but what did that do? How did that benefit his speech? That's always key as an evaluator, to be able to make those correlations. I found that when you came up before his speech to do to talk about what the topic of his speech was and what's that?
Objectives.
The objectives. It almost seemed like it was the first time that you had read the objectives. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it's, if possible, it's generally good to read the objectives ahead of time so you're more familiar with them prior to the minute that you're giving the evaluation. And then you tend to use a lot of big words, which makes you sound intelligent, but it's also, I'm trying to think of a particular word. I think you used the word impudent at some point. I can't even remember what the word was, but you used a word that if I was in Dan's situation, I would have been like, I don't even know what that means, so I don't know how that can relate to my speech if I don't even know what the definition of that word is. So just be aware sometimes of the grammar that you use, and use more dumbed down words for for those of us that are not grammarian experts. But yeah, overall, a really good job with your evaluation. And then Art, for your table topics evaluation, you gave very good feedback on how the speakers, what they did well, and you also you highlighted quite a bit where the speakers could improve, which is nice because I know that's something that a lot of people forget about, and you definitely made sure to have a very specific point where each of the speakers could improve on, which is great. I think you spent a little too much time talking about the content of the speech, which I don't feel is necessary because we just listen to the speeches. I think that if you had spent more time, instead of just reading or talking about what they talked about, more saying what they did well with their speech, and sort of how the content of the speech could have been improved, instead of just talking about what they said, sort of. Does that make sense?
Yes,
I'm kind of
I
rambling.
actually agree with you.
But yeah, I really appreciate the fact that you had very specific points as to where each of the speakers could improve upon. And that's my report for today.
Okay, great.
Do I hand it off to myself? Or I hand it off to you? Please welcome our Toastmasters.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, General Evaluator. That was very insightful for all of us. Now we're going to do a quick awards, and then we have special business presentation by our Vice President of Membership, Aaron Russell. You're still prepared to do that tonight? Okay, great. All right, so our best table topics. Drum roll. Aaron. Here you go, here you go. Now you're putting these up in your cubicle somewhere, right? Like a
Yes.
nice little string of them across? People ask you and, yeah, oh, no, you don't get this. I always try to hand the little chip up there, okay? Okay, good. All right, good. But it was neck and neck, just so you know. So it was neck and neck. Then we did have a best evaluator, and that would be Art Atkinson. There you go. Thank you. Art is a premier evaluator, always
I learned from the best.
gets, yeah, you've been in the club for a long time. We did not have a best speaker, but we had a lovely speech tonight, so we'll look forward to hearing that again. And now I'd like to hand off to our Vice President of Membership, Erin Russell. Okay.
Having a strong membership, both in quality and quantity, is really critical to having a successful Toastmasters Club. Attracting and retaining members is really key to achieving this. So as your Vice President of Membership, I'd just like to speak to you all tonight just a little bit on how we can improve upon our membership attraction and retention. So I'll highlight how we can attract potential members as guests, turn those guests into members, and also retain the members that we currently have here. So when it comes to recruiting new people, I look at there being two different types of tactics. Formal membership drives and also more informal recruitment methods. So when I think of a formal membership drive, I think of it as really a designated period where we're particularly driving hard for members. A particular event, I believe we do one currently once a year in January, I believe. That's where it was last year. I'm not sure if that's... and I know I would personally like to see us do 2 membership drives a year. I know that's kind of something that we've talked about before, and I think a big deterrent behind us doing that is cost. I mean, it sounds like our membership drives are very expensive, even given the fact that the international organization gives us a stipend of how much? $50. I would like us to kind of think outside the box on ways that we can really save money on these drives, because I know even just the cost of renting out some buildings is more than $50. Something that came to my mind was maybe using Chautauqua Park or something. I don't know if that would cost any money, or just a way of reducing the costs associated with drives so we can afford to do more than one a year, and maybe make them a little more interesting so that we can attract more potentials. And then there's also the more informal recruitment events that I think of as word of mouth. So basically just telling people about the club at work, on the street, at public events, just telling people about the club. And I think the best way that I look at it is just making it come up in conversation. If you kind of force it upon someone, hey, you should really join the club, I don't know, it can be a little too intense, sometimes a little creepy if you're too direct with them about it. I like to think of it as more just naturally coming up in conversation. Like if you're talking about what you're doing tonight, you can just say, I'm going to Toastmasters. And a lot of times when I say something like that, people are like, oh, what's Toastmasters? Of course, they always think that we make toast or something. And then you can sort of comment on what the club is and kind of gauge their interest based on your description of the club. There's also sort of publication methods, newspaper articles, Facebook, social media. We do a really good job of updating our Facebook. I really like that we have that internet presence out there. Putting flyers around town. I know a lot of places like the Everybody's Cafe, they kind of have like a public space billboard where people can post things. It might not be a bad idea for us to post stuff on there once in a while, just so people that walk by just say, oh, Toastmasters, or I've heard of that, or I wonder what that is. I think we just need to accept the fact that the majority of people that hear about our club are probably not going to be interested. And that, you know, so the way that I look at it is we need to shout from the mountaintop and cast wide nets. That's phrases that I always like to use, just because if you shout from a mountaintop, even if most people who hear your message don't care, you can't get to the people that do care unless you start doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When we're looking at turning guests into members, so once we have the guest at the meeting, the recruitment process does not stop there. That's only the beginning, because we need to make sure that our guests are feeling welcome when they come in. Really, I think that it's a good idea to seat them next to someone that they already know. Maybe it's the person that told them about the club, or if there's someone that they're already familiar with in the organization, or even just someone that they talk to on the phone. If you sit them next to that person, there's kind of that relationship already, and you just feel a lot more comfortable sitting next to someone that you already know. It would be nice. I know that we do have some membership packets. I'm handing those out to people, especially those who are unfamiliar with the club. Now, Adi used to be a member of Toastmasters, or still is.
Yeah.
Yes, so maybe not as critical for him, but for people that are just finding out about the organization and coming for the first time, handing them a formal packet and saying, this is what our club is about, read more about it, you know, that's great. And something that the Toastmasters says is give them the magazine. I mean, I know that once I read the magazine once, I just kind of get rid of it. I don't have any use for it. It'd be nice to hold on to those magazines and just have some around so we can just hand them to people, because there's some awesome articles in there that do a great job of showcasing what our club is about and some of the learning experiences and types of events that we do. It's a really great way for people to know more about our club. And then once the member, after the meeting, it's a good idea to follow up with the member or with the guest and ask them what they felt about the club. Make sure you get their contact info if they're okay with giving that to you. That way we can follow up later on. Unfortunately, a lot of times guests tend to leave the meeting without any sort of contact info, and they're more likely to not return if that happens. Even if we do give them a enrollment sheet to fill out, I find a lot of times guests that come in don't come back, and people don't have the contact info to follow up with that person and ask if they're looking into returning again. So then once we've turned a guest into a potential member, or turned a guest into a member, now we need to retain those members. So for new members, it's a good idea to go through an orientation process. Maybe the meeting after they join, you know, giving a formal, hey, welcome to the club, here's a name tag, and then give them a mentor. Now, mentors are key. I know I'm in charge of the mentorship process, and Dan has given a speech about mentorship in the past. It's really key. Now, I've been mentoring David, and I think, David can maybe comment on it further, but I think the meetings that we've been having both on the phone and in person, would you say that they've really helped you a lot?
Yeah, it's been very helpful. And
getting acquainted to
yeah.
the club and
Exactly.
understanding, you know, how to write a speech, what the different roles are of the club, and how to get into pathways and all that stuff. I think it's really helpful to have that person that you can go to for help. And finally is the older members. Those are unfortunately the people that get forgotten about the most, but they're really the people that keep the organization glued together. And unfortunately, it's very easy for these older members to be forgotten about and kind of feel a little jaded or burnt out because they are taking on a lot more work than other members of the club, since they tend to have leadership organizations and kind of know how the club is run. We really need to keep those people engaged just as much as everyone else. A good way of doing that is kind of spicing up the meetings once in a while. You know, themed meetings, having a snack master, I know that's something that other clubs do, like having one person designated as the person that brings in snacks, and then during the meeting, you know, ideally snacks that aren't going to cause a distraction, but just something to make the meeting more exciting. I know the potluck that we do once a year, I really liked doing that. Now, I don't know if that wouldn't make sense to do that regularly, because it's good to have a designated meeting space, I think, but having ways of spicing up the club really helps engage those people that have been doing it for years and years. And finally, celebrating milestones, that's great. You know, with people move further in pathways, it's good to, here's a certificate for reaching level 2. Just something to make them feel good about progressing further through the club. Because sometimes those milestones can be forgotten about easily. A membership interest survey, I didn't even know that this existed until the other day. It's basically a way for people to list what they want to get out of the club. And I think that it would be great for us to do this once a year. Just have people fill out this interest survey and hand it in. You know, it can be anonymous. It doesn't need to have your name on it. But just so that we have an understanding on what people are interested in. And, you know, if we want to change up the club structure, within reason, obviously, to target those interests, I mean, that's something that can definitely help retain members. So, obviously, we have a goal of reaching and retaining 20 members. This isn't 20 members is not some magic number that Toastmasters has just made up. It's based on research that they've conducted that shows that 20 members is a good way of having a club that's fun and efficient, and making sure that all the roles are filled. But there's really a reason that that's the goal. And so, yeah, in order to do this, we need to attract potential members, turn guests into members, and then retain those members as well once they've become part of the club. So even though I am your VP of M, I really can't do it alone. I need the help of everyone else in this club to be able to meet this goal. So thank you all for your time. Yes, Art?
I have some opinions I'd like to share with you.
Okay.
And we're close to having to finish, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I went too long.
No, it's all right.
A bit longer than that.
Do you wanna, we can break the meeting and then you can share
Yeah.
with him? Okay, okay. Thank you, Erin, really appreciate it, yeah. By the way, those membership interest forms, if you did put your name on it as the Vice President of Education, I'd be interested to know what your goals are, where you are interested, so we can help you meet that.
Yeah.
And thank you for taking the initiative to get us going with that, and we look forward to having ideas and, just sort of unrolling some things with you, because all of that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I'm gonna turn it back to our president to bring us through to the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Thanks, Erin, for your good ideas. Do you have interest surveys that you can give out to all the members?
I don't tonight. I just printed
that next.
I mean, if people would like to look at the interest survey, I have one here. But yeah, I would, if that's something we'd like to do, I can definitely print some out for next meeting.
Okay.
People can fill them
I
out.
think that might be a good idea. You gotta have info before you can
Yeah.
take directions. Two things I'll mention. Our treasurer is not here tonight, Carmen's not here tonight, but we're coming up on the point where we pay our 6 months worth of dues. So if anybody wants to pay dues at any point, I can step in for Carmen and take those. It's $54 for 6 months. That covers from October 1st through April 1st. And we have to turn them in early, so that's why we're getting started thinking about it. The second thing is, once we break the meeting, please talk to Jean as VP of Ed. She needs to keep scheduling speeches so that we have productive meetings. We like to have at least one prepared speech every meeting, which just adds so much more energy to a meeting. Is there any other business? Anything else to bring up? Aaron.
This is kind of important. Art walk, not this coming Friday, but the Friday after. We need people to sign up for slots.
2 Fridays,
Is it? Yeah. So
not this Friday, not the next Friday.
But the Friday after.
that.
Yeah.
2 weeks from Friday.
okay. So I thought we had talked about doing signups at this meeting. Maybe it was next meeting. Should I hold it off until next meeting?
I just was clarifying when the art walk is.
It's in 3 weeks.
Which is,
Yeah.
No,
okay.
let's just go ahead and say, if you'd like to
Oh, I see
volunteer,
what you're saying.
Art Walk, Adi, if, in case you don't know, is a town event on the square. It's centered around the art galleries that exist, but they have music or different kinds of events. And so there's a lot of people in the square, and nonprofits can get a space to have a little booth. And we've tried that once, and we're gonna try it again the first Friday in September. We want 2 people to serve every shift.
There's
You know,
3 shifts.
hour-long shifts. So if anybody knows they want to do that, please see Aaron immediately after the meeting.
Okay.
And if there's nothing else, I'm gonna say we're adjourned.
Thank you.